Many of you who play first-person shooters would have heard this term a lot by now, boomer shooters. In a general sense, we often put into two main descriptions. The first one being a classic, retro, or retro-inspired shooter that is easy on the story and heavy on the fast-paced gameplay. And the other description being, well, game old. But how many of you have actually sat down and read the dictionary definition, so to speak, on what a boomer shooter is? And why are some games debatable on whether they are one or not? I wanted to look into this topic further, just for fun, and also see what other subgenres of shooters there are. So strap in and let's discuss. Now, one of the reasons for wanting to look into this further is not only because of seeing other people's take on what constitutes as a boomer shooter, but also because I feel like I've miscategorized a few games myself as boomer shooters, and that's that I even grew up with classic shooters. So, first of all, what is a boomer shooter? And what is the definition of it? Of course, this is a more recent term, but essentially, it's any first-person shooter focused more on fast-paced gameplay, reminiscent of shooters from the 90s, like Doom, Quake, and Duke Nukem 3D. You can go a little deeper as well, like having no regenerative health, massive arsenals, and in some cases, a more dungeon crawler style of gameplay, like collecting keys to unlock doors. But for the most part, any action game similar to 90s classics seems to be the most common term. But is an arena shooter like Quake 3 Arena any less boomer shootery than Quake 1 or 2? Only it's now multiplayer? And can you have multiple subgenres in your old-timey shooter? In my Duke Nukem video, which, by the way, Duke Nukem 3D is a boomer shooter, I did make a joke about how the original boomer shooters were actually made mostly by Gen X, and played mostly by Gen X and Millennials, but upon further inspection, it does seem like a lot of baby boomers worked on these games too, and well, would have played them as well. This of course is not why these classic shooters are called that, but simply because boomer equals old. Just like how any young person was, and maybe still is, called a millennial, even though the oldest ones are in their 40s now. Anyway, the name is clearly just tongue-in-cheek, made up by younger gamers. Was it you, Gen Z, who came up with it? As back then, if there was a game that resembled Doom, it was often called a Doom clone. And this seemed to last quite a few years too. But if I remember correctly, it was sometime maybe after Half-Life when they stopped using that term. There was even a point before GoldenEye 64 came out where they wondered if this would be a successful Doom clone. But I like to think that after playing the game, they realized this was no Doom. This was something new. Now, up until somewhat recently, I would sometimes, for whatever reason, put Half-Life into the boomer shooter category, simply because it is an older shooter that can technically be played run and gun style, and it didn't have things like objective markers or other modern mechanics. But no, Half-Life is not a boomer shooter. In fact, it moved away from Doom and Quake's usual gameplay. It was more plot-driven, it had no cutscenes or transitions, except for that one part where you're knocked out, and it had more puzzle solving and methodical shooting. It was not a tactical shooter, but it also wasn't Doom, so much so that the marketing even tried to showcase this. Probably one of the only Doom killers that actually walked the walk. Yeah, they were pretty serious about this in the marketing. I miss this level of competitive banter. I remember at the time this game feeling very different to previous first-person shooters, so much so that it was a slow transition to edgy 12-year-old me. But yet, for whatever reason, as time went by, and after even newer types of shooters emerged, at one point, I put Half-Life in the boomer shooter category, simply because it no longer played like modern shooters. There is apparently a type of shooter called Half-Likes that take clear inspiration from Half-Life in terms of having more storytelling, puzzle solving, and more methodical shootouts. Fellow YouTuber Guncanny has quite a few Half-Like videos as well as a few different jank ones. You know, those ambitious smaller company shooters, especially from the 2000s. Some games that fall under the Half-Like category are Red Faction, Fear, though with a lot more horror elements, and to some degree, games like BioShock, though with new mechanics. In the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a gradual shift towards more tactical shooters as well, which was probably the most direct opposition to a boomer shooter, and one that would not share any similarities or inspiration. Unlike Half-Likes, tactical shooters I feel share no similarities to a classic run-and-gun shooter. Things like Rainbow Six or milsims like Operation Flashpoint and Armor. The reason I bring this up is because I feel like some boomer shooters evolved into more narrative-driven games, whereas tactical shooters were always an outlier. Soldier of Fortune I would consider more like a boomer shooter, even if it is a lot more plot-driven, as it retains the fast-paced run-and-gun gameplay. I remember at the time calling this game Doom with Terrorists, and I still stand by that. Its sequel, however, went for a more tactical approach, and while you can still technically run and gun it, I wouldn't consider the sequel anything like a boomer shooter. If anything, it felt like that awkward gap between run and guns and games like Call of Duty that would follow. We don't talk about the third game, but we do talk about subscribing, if you haven't already, and well, if you want to. It's free, and if it entices you, I would be more than happy to discuss your constructive comment on my channel, and I try to reply to every single one. Subscribe today. So semi-recently, I was playing the new Starship Troopers game, Ultimate Bug War, and immediately from the trailers, it was clear that they were going for a retro, old-school look and feel, and in line with when the movie came out. I myself mentioned it went for that Quake-like look and feel, but upon playing it, it reminded me a lot more of games like Command & Conquer Renegade. The maps are larger, there are many objectives to complete, and you can even pilot a vehicle. YouTuber G-Man Lives mentioned the game felt more like Halo and other early 2000s shooters than it did Doom or Quake, and yeah, he's 100% correct. But yet, many people look at this game and immediately pile it into the boomer shooter category. Speaking of which, I've seen some people, not many, even class Halo as a boomer shooter, simply because it's now a classic and a shooter. But come on, you only need to look at its name. Many will tell you that the gameplay evolved, and some might even say specifically in the combat. Like Half-Life, Halo was its evolution, so to speak. Now, I know what you're probably saying, especially you there, Chris, I think, who's probably saying, who cares? And well, you're kind of right, it doesn't technically matter, but for the sake of discussion and nuance, I think it's fun to analyze these subcategories, just like discussing heavy metal subgenres, and never having someone maliciously disagree or gatekeep whatsoever. So, let's finish it up with Doom. Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal are for the most part considered boomer shooters, except they of course do have new mechanics, like leveling up, as well as finishing moves known as glory kills. It seems to blend the classic style of Doom, while heavily incorporating modern polishes. Meanwhile, Doom 3 I would consider a half-like, in its more survival horror and puzzle-solving aspect, that differed to the Doom games before them. Hell, the first chapter has you exploring a research facility before opening a portal to another dimension, where all hell literally breaks loose in this case. When I played Doom 2016, I couldn't really get into it. I felt like it was too fast-paced for me, and there was something about it that just didn't click with me personally, even though I knew it was a good game. Then, I played Doom 64 for the first time, which, by the way, is the Doom 3 before Doom 3, and there's something about the classic Doom gameplay that just felt right with me. It was slower paced, felt more like a dungeon crawler, looking for keys to escape, and with more of a focus on finding the exit than killing everything that moves. But now, is Doom 64 more of a boomer shooter than Doom 2016? Even though Doom 64 is arguably slower paced? What actually dictates this? And is it kinda subjective with some games? Maybe boomer shooters are the friends we made along the way. Okay, before I wrap this up, I want to do a quick fire round of what is and isn't a boomer shooter, according to me. And I want you guys to let me know if you agree, or if I am very wrong. So here goes. Wolfenstein 3D. Yes, I think so. Doom? Yes. Duke Nukem 3D? Yes. Quake? Yes. Quake 2? Yes. Half-Life? No. Return to Castle Wolfenstein? Maybe not. Serious Sam? Yes. Halo? No. OG Call of Duty? No. Let's jump ahead a bit. Doom 2016? Yes. Dusk? Yes. Overkill? Yeah. Ion Fury? Definite yes. Trepang 2? More like fear, so I'm gonna say no. I could keep going, but I think that's enough for now. Despite the category being kind of loose at times, I will say that the most recent example of a true classic 90s shooter has been Ion Fury, and to me personally, feels more boomer shootery than Doom 2016 or Overkill. I generally feel like the term has kind of evolved, going from retro style shooter to anything fast paced or action oriented that is basically not like Call of Duty, and definitely not a tactical shooter. I do sometimes think the name is slapped on to attract gamers, but the game itself may be a mix of different subgenres, which is not a bad thing at all. I think it's just trying to put it under one label. So, my conclusion? While some games are objectively considered boomer shooters, I feel like there are others that are more subjective. Maybe because of nuances and inspirations, or maybe because the term itself is just loose at times. All I can say is, if it's got lots of guns, lots of action, and feels like a classic 90s shooter, then it might very well be a boomer shooter. If it has other mechanics and other nuances, and is kind of blurry to define, but is a lot of fun, then hey, you can call it whatever you like, as long as it's good. Also, man, am I sick of saying boomer shooters. So if you excuse me, I'm gonna play a classic shooter, but I can't figure out which one I want to play. Probably Half-Life. It's Half-Life. I'm playing Half-Life. It's not a boomer shooter, but whatever. See ya! Thank you so much for watching. What are your favorite boomer shooters? Whether old or new, do you have any that you recommend? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.
From the creators of Run and Gun and Never Reload comes Boomer. You play as a boomer who shoots other boomers, and your gun goes boom. Also, you have a pet dog called Boomer, who also shoots boomers. Buy Boomer Shooter today, or go to hell. Rated B for Boomer.